Hello there, welcome to episode 76 of Never Mind the Bullens. It's your bite-sized Everton podcast and vodcast. I'm Mike Peters. For the podcast listener, you won't be able to see this, but obviously the vodcast viewer will. The fact that I'm wearing black seemed appropriate today, because we're going to have to do the whole sackcloth and ashes bit after that Derby debacle. And this is one of the rare occasions when you see the titles of the podcast, which I try and come up with something witty and alliterative, and a bit of a play on words, where I've actually thought about it before I've recorded it, because I normally just think about it when I'm posting it. And I think it has to be Derby and Joke Club, as opposed to Derby and Joan Club, because at this point the club is a joke. And I tend to try and be quite pragmatic as an Evertonian. You know, I try to be less reactionary than some supporters, some aspects of the fan base, but I think after that it is very difficult to be pragmatic and not react emotionally. Even 12 hours on from the end of the match, and a long walk to the ground before and away from it afterwards, to sort of ruminate and cogitate. And I watched the highlights, such as they were, again, and I can guarantee I will give you better analysis of the game than Ashley Williams did on Match of the Day, because that was ridiculous. Helpfully stating that Rafa Benitez is in trouble and we need Dominic Calvert-Lewin back. I mean, whoa, bloody hell, searing stuff. Well done, Ashley, as a former Everton centre-half. Absolutely top stuff. But we'll deal with the game itself, firstly, and I was thinking, well, this is a positive, but then actually, this is so indicative of where we are in terms of our Derby performance at Goodison Park. It's not a positive at all. We've finally seen Everton score a goal with our own eyes at Goodison in a derby for the first time in Jurgen Klopp's entire tenure, because when we scored 2 last season, none of us were there because of COVID. So the last time we scored was when Brendan Rodgers was still in charge, and that says it all. Now, we've managed to eke out a few draws in that time, goalless draws, but we got one yesterday. Damari Gray actually scored, so we've sort of broken that hoodoo. But the fact that we've only scored 1 goal at Goodison Park against Liverpool that we've seen with our own eyes in 6 years is absolutely pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. And there is something mental. There is a mental block when it comes to playing Liverpool. Now, that was exacerbated a million times over by our current form. And you cannot, when I said to me, well, it's either going to go, and I said this in the last episode of this, that it's either going to go one or two ways. We're either going to get hammered 5-0 or given an absolute hiding, which is exactly what happened. I think it's what most of us thought would happen. Or we'd somehow fluke a 1-0 because, form goes out the window. But when I said that, I don't think, and when any of us said that, and you don't say it with any sort of belief, because there isn't any. Liverpool could have been 3 up in the opening couple of minutes. They were so dominant, and I'm just looking back at the stats again. 70% possession. They had 16 shots, 7 on target to our 2. We had 8 shots. It was like shooting fish in a barrel for them. And the only reason we got back into the game was because they'd taken their foot off the gas so spectacularly, because the game was won after 20 minutes, as far as they were concerned, and as far as most of us was concerned. They were passing around after 25 minutes like it was a training ground exercise. They were just running rings around us. The setup of the team was wrong. What possessed Rafa Benitez to play 2 in the middle when Alan has no pace at all against an extremely well-drilled midfield 3 of theirs? Fabinho screening the back 4 and did it brilliantly. He was barely 5 yards off Joel Matip and Virgil van Dijk the entire game. Henderson further forward on the sort of left-hand side of a triangle, and then Thiago further forward again. And they just run. There was nothing we could do. Why Fabian Delph wasn't playing is beyond me, beyond comprehension, because we were just running through us like a dose of salts. And Solomon Rondon, who actually did okay last night, unpopular opinion, probably, I know, but he did okay. But it was so easy for Van Dijk and Matip to be able to, with him playing in front of them, that it's just meat and drink. It was easy. So the only time we looked like creating anything, Damari Gray, who had a good game and scored a good goal, although he gave a shocking pass to Seamus Coleman, which led to the 3rd. He played pretty well and he was our main attacking threat. But when we got players going at them and round the back of them and turned them round and went down the sides, that's when we were getting a little bit of joy and had them I'd say not on the ropes. We didn't at any point, really. But we were creating things there. So I didn't understand why he didn't play 3 and play them on the counter-attack, because trying to out-football Liverpool is just not going to happen. They're just far too good for us. So it should be a case of sitting back, get the ball forward early, down the channels, and turn them round and be able to push up. Looking again at the goals, I mean, it was like the Alamo. Jordan Pickford, having looked at them again, should do better with 3 of them. Although he made a couple of good saves. Obviously, that one from Salah early on, but it ended meaningless. But again, a mental block with him in the derby, because he's been pretty good this season. But there was just again, there's something snaps in his head against them, and that's indicative of the rest of the team as well. Seamus Coleman last night was shown up the fact that, and now we'll get to the crux of it. Seamus Coleman was shown up last night that he is past it. And his frustration started in the first minute with the miscommunication with Pickford, which almost allowed a goal to be scored, which led to a corner. Then Matip should have scored, etc. They had 2 chances in the opening 70 seconds, and that says that we should have signed a right. We knew we should have signed a right back in the summer, and now we're getting to the crux of it. Although we were back in the game for a period, and we did start the second half better, there was always the risk that we were going to end up, something was going to go wrong, and Liverpool would be able to snap us and break and score, which is what happened, and we handed it to them. And it was just a pathetic sight for most of the game. The fact that the Park End was 2/3 empty by full time, and I at one stage uttered a word I never thought I'd utter to Everton players, and I called them cowards in the first half, and I did it twice, and I make no bones about it, because the lack of heart and the lack of desire, there was no one showing for the ball at times. Nobody was prepared to put their hand up and say, I want the ball. No leaders on that pitch. They all looked like rabbit in the headlights. None of them was prepared to say, I'll take ownership of this. I'll do this. And obviously, I didn't see the coverage, but I understand that after the game, the camera cut to Anthony Gordon, and there's the look on his face, I think, summed up how a lot of us felt as Evertonians. And of course, the sack the board chant started. You've seen the piece of footage of Marcel Brands getting it in both barrels from a fan in the main stand, and with complete a complete justification as far as I'm concerned. I don't think the guy was saying anything that wasn't true. And his anger was completely well placed, but the fact that at the end of the game, people are screaming for sack the board, Ken Wright's your fault, this and that, blah, blah, all of this, and the fact that Rafa Benitez has to take some responsibility for him picking the team is I mean, when he brought Cenk Tosun on, that was almost trolling, really, because bringing him on after 80 minutes when we were 4-1 down, absolutely pointless. Fabian Delph should have come on at half time because Alan had been booked. Brings him on after 70 minutes when we're 3-1 down, the game's gone. To do what? I don't know. Brings him on for Andros Townsend. Don't understand that one at all. So the substitutions again, and this is a few games on the spin now, I can't fathom at all that the wrong changes, or there's a lack of changes, or they're at the wrong time. That's squarely at the manager's door. In terms of the personnel he's got to work with, that's not at his door. That is at the hierarchy of the club. So the fact that there was so much anger directed at so many people says it all, really, because everybody in the hierarchy of the football club is culpable in some way. They have contributed to the absolute mess that we find ourselves in. Only Everton could have had a billionaire owner come in and completely miss the target with everything. Moshiri has to take blame for the managers that he has hired and fired. Ultimately, he has hired them. Bill Kenwright, you can shout at Bill Kenwright all you want. The fact of it is, he's basically an ornament now. He's there purely as the man who, as a connection that he can, as a sounding board, effectively say, well, what do you think the fans will make of this? But ultimately, Moshiri and Usmanov are going to make those decisions. Let's make no bones about it. But Bill Kenwright has no involvement in the day-to-day running of the football club anymore, really. He's the chairman. He's a figurehead. And he's a lightning rod, really, for a lot of supporters. But he's not responsible. Marcel Brands has neatly slips away in the background there. And he, along with his predecessor, have got to look at themselves and go, right, what is the strategy of the football club? What is the strategy? Because it's gone from all over the place. The amount of money that has been wasted over the past years, and we're now seeing the sort of the fag end of this, and the denouement of it, with the fact that Rafa Benitez only had a £1.7 million to spend in the summer because of FFP, because of the money. Not that the club hasn't got money, but because of the money that has been wasted over the past 5 years on sacking managers, on boondoggle player signings with completely, mishit strategies all over the place. 3 number 10s, that classic example. And look at the players that have been signed for the most part. I mean, the Ancelotti signings, all right, James Rodriguez, very expensive. That's a piece of largesse that you can argue either way that it worked or it didn't. But Decore and Allen, fine, I'm all right with them. But they were basically and Ben Godfrey, only players he signed. He's pretty much off the hook on that one. Can't really fault Damari Gray. He's been excellent. Townsend, can't fault that. Okay, so Benitez is off the hook, and he's not really had any money to sign anybody. It's prior to that this has all gone wrong, and the sort of. I mean, we're making like we're bloody Floyd Mayweather here, spaffing the money around like nobody's business, and this is what's happened. And you're looking at that squad, and they're going, right, there's no options on the bench. There has been no development from the under-23s to speak of. Anthony Gordon's come through. He's the only one. Ellis, Sims, Onyango, etc., they went off to play for the under-23s. Lewis, Dominic, they're all kids. But are they coming in and going, right, yeah, we're ready to, like a Mason Greenwood or a Curtis Jones or, Emil Smith-Rowe or Bukayo Saka, any of these, but you're thinking, are these lads that are going to come in and take over? And the simple answer is Anthony Gordon apart, who I think has to be a regular starter now. Going, well, actually, we've no idea because we haven't seen them, and seemingly what's being seen on the training ground is enough to say, no, we're not convinced about these lads. Now, again, that's down to coaching and down to management, because what are we doing on the training ground week to week where these players obviously are not getting in the team, and then you're expecting them to come in completely cold when they've had no minutes and all the rest of it, clearly with a manager that doesn't really trust them or doesn't know them, and then you're expecting them to change matches or do something, or not change matches but influence matches in some positive way, and you're thinking that's impossible. If you don't instill confidence in your players, the players will have no confidence. That comes from the coaches. And Duncan Ferguson's in that as well. The whole coaching staff, management structure of the club is culpable for the situation that we find ourselves in right now. Sacking Rafael Benitez is a complete waste of time, in my opinion, because I doubt that anybody can get better out of that squad than he can. Duncan Ferguson come in, yeah, fine, do it like he did last time. Couple of games before Carlo Ancelotti came in, reaction for a couple of games. That's not enough. That's not enough, and so therefore I don't think sacking him. But there has to be a root and branch review of what the club is doing. What is the strategy? How are we going to achieve it? What are we going to improve that playing squad? Bramley Moore, fine, great. It's all wonderful, and that's cracking on. But the fundamental and more immediate problem is that team and that squad. Not the first 11, because we've got a good first 11. It's the squad. It's a squad game these days. And am I coming away from the ground last night, and I said this to a few lads just before I left, and I did stay to the end, much to my astonishment, was how long are the likes of Richarlison, Abdoulaye Doucouré, Jordan Pickford, Ben Godfrey, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, our key players, absolute spine of the team, how long are they going to hang around and play with this sludge, this detritus of football? How long are they going to hang around? They're international players. So, I genuinely, I fear at the minute. I'm struggling to think of a more. I've gone to derbies. I used to love going to derbies when I started, and maybe because we did all right in the derbies back in the 90s when I started going, and we won a few, But I hate it so much so last night. I was so nervous. I was so changed. I couldn't even eat my tea. I was like, I don't want to eat. Don't want to eat anything. I just thought, the genuine fear. I'm going there. And I bet you I'm not the only Evertonian that feels like that. Absolutely guarantee I'm not the only one. And, you know, because we know what's coming. We know. Because we're too long in the tooth. We've been watching for too long this. And we're thinking, it's just, we're going to watch a disaster here. You know. It's Groundhog Day every single season. We go. I mean, like both about it. Liverpool are an outstanding team. There's no question about that. But what are Everton doing as a team and a club, as a coaching staff, to think, right? How can we negate their threat? We weren't expecting to out-football them, but we do expect desire. We didn't. None of us thought we would be able to out-football them, you know, last night, because they're far too good. But we do expect thinking, right? How can we nullify their threat as best as we can? How can we negate that to put us get ourselves in a position where 20 minutes to go, it's 0-0 or it's 1-1, and we've got a chance of winning the game, sneaking a 2-1 win against the run of play. Our goal came completely against the run of play. We were all gobsmacked when we scored that goal. And what are the hierarchy of the clubs thinking to put ourselves in a position where we can genuinely compete with that top six? You know, genuinely compete for the European places and the Champions League places on a consistent basis, because we are right now a million miles away from that. And that is a fundamental flaw of strategy from the top of the club, recruitment, which falls squarely on the management, the coaching, and the director of football. Ultimately, he is the person that has to be responsible for that, because he's ultimately directing it. So, and in terms of getting players through from the age groups into the first team, so that FFP does not become such a colossal noose around our neck as it is at the minute. So there's an awful lot of soul searching to be done. There'll be an awful lot written over the next few days. I've already started to see it this morning as I record this, about pieces about, you know, the club and deep dives into it. And there'll be more and more of it over the next few days. But the good thing is we have another home game in 5 days against Arsenal. Very tough game, no question. They're playing really well at the moment. Mikel Arteta has got them playing well after a really difficult start to the season. But we need an enormous show. It's got to be a backs to the wall. And I hate to invoke it, it's got to be a Dogs of War performance on Monday. We have to try and get a result, a win. A draw, Tottenham going, oh, we played well against Tottenham. Benitez goes, well, yeah, okay, we did, but we did okay, but it wasn't brilliant, and it was a really fine. But we need to fight and just to try and change the dynamic, because we're generally looking at it going, where the hell have our next 3 points coming from? Arsenal, Chelsea, Leicester, all to come before Christmas. Palace away, they're playing well as well, doing really well. Where's the next 3 points coming from? Because if we don't arrest this, and this is now 8 games without a win, then we are in severe trouble. Severe trouble. And it's not about a lack of quality necessarily in the starting 11, but it's about a lack of fight and discipline and desire and heart. And that's why I call them cowards, because that's what they just went hiding. So it needs players to stand up and be counted and say, right, I am going to take ownership of this. I am a professional footballer for this club. I am paid a lot of money every week to do my job, and at the moment I am not doing it anywhere near well enough, and it's been consistent like that for a couple of months. If you did that in any of the corporate environment, you'd start to be managed out of that. But somehow these guys seem to get away with it. So they've got to everybody in the club, from the top to the bottom, anybody in a position of influence has got to up their game drastically and immediately. There's got to be a huge inquest over the course of the next few days at Finch Farm to try and get ourselves in a position where we can try and compete with Arsenal. And the fans have to play their part on Monday night as well and get behind them, as we did last night, to be fair. But equally, they've got to give us something to get behind. And on that note, this has been a Top Content production. Get in touch at NMTBpod on Twitter, nmtbpod@gmail.com, or leave me a voice note via the description of the podcast. Until next time, after the Arsenal game on Monday night, keep the faith. Come on, you Blues.